Diablo 4. Man, Blizzard has a tendency to not be able to execute on their live services. Diablo 4 is not just a one-off game. It is very much intended to keep players drawn in for the long term. And while the launch, I'd say, was received with pretty positive fanfare, like people felt like there was a solid foundation here, what's followed, unfortunately, has been disappointing as of now. Who knows how things will look like months or years from now. Diablo 3, you may recall, was just a disaster at launch, and it did get a lot better much later. But, you know, people didn't buy this game so that it could be good much later. They want it to be good now. And not to say there isn't a good amount of content here that can be enjoyed, but as a live service so far, in terms of the seasonal content, it's just disappointing, which is why the user score has plummeted to a 2.2, as I previously discussed. I talked about this patch that Blizzard released recently that nerfed so much of the game that it just made the game less fun. So scrolling down here, this IGN article talks about how the patch made sweeping nerfs across the board. The Sorcerer in particular got nerfed to hell, but all classes got nerfed to some degree. Endgame activities like Helltide have been made harder. There's been an increase to the cost of opening mystery chests. Experience bonus for killing monsters at higher levels has been nerfed. Blizzard significantly nerfed crit strike damage, vulnerable damage, cooldown reduction, as well as certain affixes, which reduces the effectiveness of many established builds. There's this one Reddit post that went viral that garnered over 24,000 upvotes that puts it aptly. Patch 1.1 is essentially a slowdown to every single part of the game. It's not as if the game was lightning fast to begin with, but now it is a proper slog. I mean, they even added 2 extra seconds to the amount of time that it takes to teleport out of dungeons, which is just highly unnecessary and creates suspicions that Blizzard is just trying to artificially extend the gameplay experience of Diablo 4 because they can't figure out a more substantial way to do so. As a result, Blizzard has had to go on the defense, addressing the backlash. They recently did a campfire chat that this Kotaku article breaks down, and right here is the full video, but the team did acknowledge that this was not a good idea for a patch, the way they nerfed everything instead of trying to balance things out and bring things up to the level of things that were fun. So they plan on not doing a patch like this ever again. They promised to communicate better. One of the biggest qualms people had with the patch was that it just kind of dropped out of the blue without much warning, so it felt like the carpet was pulled from under players' legs. And they talked about their intentions, about they didn't want any one stat to be the defining thing in endgames. They wanted a variety of builds to be functional, but the execution of how they went about fixing that was the issue. And so at least they acknowledged their mistakes. We'll see how they fix that stuff. But then further ill sentiment was garnered through the Battle Pass, which Season 1 finally introduced. But the fact that you can only get 666 coins or premium currency in the Battle Pass means that you not only can't even buy the cheapest item in the shop, because the cheapest item in the shop is 800 coins, it also means that you can't buy the next Battle Pass. The game doesn't reward you for your coming back to the game and completing the Battle Pass by allowing you to just spend on a Battle Pass one time and then keep getting the next Battle Passes through the coin acquisitions. So it all creates the perception that the Battle Pass is being very stingy, and it's not just a perception, it's just a reality. But it's not just the patch with the nerfs alongside the stingy Battle Pass that has plagued Season 1 of Diablo 4 with negative feedback. There's also the implementation of things like Malignant Hearts as part of this season. So gems are a big element in Diablo 4, a big part of creating builds and slotting them into equipment so that your character can play to the playstyle that adheres to you, as well as to be able to maximize their capabilities. Malignant Hearts was supposed to mix things up on that end, but people very quickly discovered that it's basically just gems with another name. And beyond that, one of the most requested features was a separate inventory space for things like gems, or in this case, Malignant Hearts for the season, but they didn't offer that up, so Malignant Hearts take up a lot of inventory space, and inventory space is obviously very important in a game like Diablo, where you want to have as many tools and options available as possible. Beyond that, the process of collecting gems itself can be tedious and cumbersome, and not much about that has changed with Malignant Hearts, as they are very similar to gems in the way they function and are acquired. And then going back to the Battle Pass, aside from the fact that it's stingy with its coins and premium currency give out, There's also the fact that the content that it offers isn't particularly compelling based on feedback from hardcore players. So we've got articles like these: Diablo 4 Season 1 Battle Pass leaves much to be desired, with lackluster and underwhelming cosmetics and limited variety in armor sets and weapons. The Battle Pass fails to provide enough platinum for players to buy additional cosmetics, as well as additional battle passes, diminishing its value. Blizzard's failure to impress with this battle pass may deter players from investing in future seasons, potentially hurting the longevity of Diablo 4. This was just not a good first impression. This was their first season. At the very least, for your first season, you really want to kick things off and set the tone for what's to come. If this is how a game wants to decide to kick off its live service, with a whimper, then people are going to expect a whimper from here on out. That first impression is so important, and Season 1 really made a bad impression for the live service aspect of Diablo 4. And with Blizzard's recent history of being unreliable with some of their recent game releases or content updates, or with the way they've been handling live services, people are waiting for Diablo 4 to be the thing that finally breaks that cycle. But to see something like this just be so consistent for Blizzard, that level of unreliability can be frustrating when people are trying to root for Blizzard and are trying to be optimistic about the company and its game's future. But you know what is reliable? The sponsor of today's video, Raycon, whose earbuds are as high quality as they are affordable. Raycon is aiming to disrupt the electronics industry by proving that you don't need to break the bank to get great audio pumped into your ears in a convenient, compact, portable, and premium form factor. And from my experience, they're definitely onto something here. Having used these earbuds at home, on the go, in the gym, you name it, I've been really happy with the crisp, balanced, and bassy audio they produce. Sound quality that's comparable to that of earbuds from other more prominent big tech brands, but starting at only half the price. Not to mention that these earbuds are incredibly feature complete, with the buttons on each side allowing you to control media playback, selection, and volume, activate voice assistant, answer and end calls, turn on sound isolation, and even change between different sound profiles. They're also comfortable, lightweight, and unintrusive by being flush with your ears, with multiple tips to choose from for the perfect fit. For added ease of mind, they're not only water and sweat resistant, but they also offer a whopping 8 hours of playback on a single charge, with a charging case offering an additional 32 hours of battery life. For all this, Raycons are so affordable that you can buy a second pair for convenience and still pay less compared to other premium tech brands' offerings. And Raycons also come in a wide variety of fun colors and patterns to boot. If you're interested in premium yet affordable earbuds and would like to support my channel along the way, click my link in the description box below, or go to buyraycon.com/yongya to get 15% off your Raycon purchase with a 30-day free return policy. Things are further broken down by GameRant here in this article titled Diablo 4's second season needs to be bigger than its first. Season 1 is called the Season of the Malignant, and complaints from fans include everything from the Malignant storyline seeming out of place, the Battle Pass leaving much to be desired, and nothing really shaking up the core gameplay all that much. Beyond that, the first season was supposed to be where the studio showed its player base why it should care about the post-launch content stream. Rather, it may have given some a reason to finally log off, at least for a while, before people start hearing that Blizzard is kind of getting its shit together with Diablo 4's live service. They don't want to go through another period like Diablo 3 where things are just kind of down in the dumps before it gets good. People want to play the game and spend time in something that is worthwhile, that is good, and so they might wait until things get to that level. And so we might see a lull of players throughout the course of this live service. And it's not just news articles reporting on this stuff. If you look at the Diablo 4 subreddit and just social media in general, the conversation is just really negative. A lot of people have complaints to express that are upvoted en masse. So if you look at, the top post this week, for example, people are posting things like, "Who asked for this?" listing out bullet points, referring to just how many damage types there are and the fact that some of them are kind of hard to tell apart. And so it makes the process of creating builds and trying to focus on certain damage types just not as elegant as it could be. Some are offering sort of balanced opinions where they enjoy the game and they express that they felt the game was worth every penny, but they can't find a reason to keep playing. And plenty of people agree with the sentiment, which is not a good sign for a long-term live service that intends to monetize throughout the course of the life cycle of this game, which I'm sure will be many, many years. Some people are discussing things like the implementation of items such as uber uniques that are so incredibly rare that very, very few people will attain them. And, there are speculations about the nefarious intentions about trying to keep players engaged and chasing after this one thing that will be unattainable to the vast majority. Only a fraction of players will obtain such items. There are those complaining about the removal of level scaling and how it makes a lot of content just completely obsolete. Instead of content scaling to your level so you can tackle any kind of content that you have fun with and obtain the rewards that you desire, you have to essentially do very specific things that match your level. And so even brand new seasonal content is giving this player negative XP because of the lack of level scaling. Some people highlighted design issues like the fact that Diablo 4 lacks that dopamine rush when you know that a good loot dropped because of the way Diablo 4 presents loot. In Diablo 4, you don't really know when a good item drops. You pick up a giant bag of loot and think, I hope one of these is good. You go back to town, sort through your giant bag and scratch your head, and eventually you might finally find something that you're like, oh man, this is really good, but there wasn't that immediate reaction of like slaying a big boss and then seeing that item drop that's clearly highlighted as something very rare and very important. Scrolling further down, somebody else complaining about the level scaling cap and what a huge mistake this was and a misunderstanding of feedback this was. There are complaints about enchanting and people expressing that just the whole thing sucks. There are plenty of complaints surrounding the cosmetic rewards you earn in the game, particularly through the free battle pass. This is the free battle pass strip that this user shared a screenshot of the cosmetics that they earned. Itemization has seen a wide range of complaints. Here's somebody just straight up saying, are we in unanimous agreement that the game needs an itemization 2.0 ASAP? And this is one of many posts talking about the itemization flaws in this game. This post in particular is 2 days old and garnered thousands of upvotes. Here's somebody talking about the lack of excitement surrounding legendary item drops because of a lack of recognizable silhouette. In Diablo 4, legendaries are just aspects. Somehow one of my favorite parts of Diablo, getting showered in legendary loot, has become just a dull state of affairs, just as dull as picking up rares. The topic of itemization once again is brought up in this post where this user claims D4 has the worst itemization of any Diablo after 150 hours of playtime. The game's online features, namely its shared world experience, has garnered some criticism where somebody's saying that it kind of feels like the loneliest multiplayer game ever. A lot of this user's friends stopped playing because of the poor decisions surrounding Season 1. And so this user is looking for ways to make friends just by stumbling upon people. And given that the game is online only for this purpose, you would think that this aspect would be something that would really shine, but you can't really interact with other players much to make friends naturally in the game. No one speaks much because the chat is horrible. No LFG feature means I can't just hop into a group with others easily when my friends aren't on, like I could in Diablo 3, so on and so forth. Even little things like the lack of controller support is something that people have highlighted and garnered thousands of upvotes. And then a bigger issue is the way world bosses are scheduled. They run from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., but there's some people who get off work at like 7:30 p.m. or can only start playing after that time period is over. And for these people who have, lives and jobs, don't get to partake in world bosses due to their schedule. So a lot of people feel like these world boss schedules should be more flexible, split up across more times throughout the day for people of various lifestyles to accommodate for people with different schedules. And then there are the server issues. Numerous users have been reported experiencing just a lot of lag and instability in the servers to the point where they're experiencing situations like these. That's obviously not ideal. Somebody's making fun of this by saying Season 1 patch notes fixed bug where player could ride around freely on their horse. Somebody else tries to come along. Right here, you can see. And they just get stuck in the same place. And they eventually just back off and they're like, I'm out of here. And keep in mind that because Diablo 4 is an online-only game, even if you want to play in single-player, experiences like these are unavoidable if servers decide to be unstable. If something happens on Blizzard's end that would cause something like this, which is why plenty of people are calling for the game to have some kind of offline mode if Blizzard can't get their servers together on their end. Plenty of complaints surrounding how all of the nerfs in the Season 1 patch didn't make the game more challenging and more fun. It just made it more boring, more of a chore, just more tedious and insufferable. I mean, I could just keep going. The list is so big that I could spend hours on this, but you get the idea. The general sentiment is that so much of Diablo 4 has been worsened by the recent changes, and then Season 1 itself does not feel substantial enough to be the big kickoff to the live service aspect of the game. It just set such a bad tone that while I don't know if it's necessarily representative of future seasons, which I hope get significantly better and much more substantial, it certainly does not make a good first impression. It certainly does not make people feel hopeful and optimistic about the future. It just makes people think that, I mean, look at how Overwatch 2 was handled. The Overwatch live service from 1 to 2, that transition was mishandled. And then 2 itself, with the stuff that they cut, including the PvE content like the hero missions and whatnot, and how down in the dumps that live service is, and how the fanfare surrounding that IP is nowhere near where it used to be. And people don't want that to be the case for Diablo because it is such a beloved IP. But with an impression like this, if they don't step things up, and if they don't communicate better, and if they aren't more considerate with the way they execute patches, and if their future seasons don't implement content that really feel rewarding and that really give players a sense of, this was worth the grind that I went through or the money that I spent, then this is just not going to be a thriving live service, especially with competitors like Path of Exile 2, which, a lot of people think looks pretty freaking awesome. And that's going to be a huge competitor to Diablo, and it's going to be free to play at that, whereas Diablo 4 is a premium game, paid game. So, with that kind of competition out there, Blizzard needs to, be more generous and respectful to the players, and just really bolster the live service aspect, and balance things in such a way where it doesn't feel so stingy, and the content is substantial, and the gameplay design considerations are just smarter. But Blizzard is showing signs of communicating and taking feedback seriously. They are reverting things like the decision to extend the process of leaving dungeons by an additional 2 seconds. That process is now going back to a 3-second cooldown, how it was at launch before they randomly, for no good reason, decided to change that to 5 seconds. And there are already some patch notes out there for the next phase of patch 1.1, where after the campfire chat here where devs express that they've heard the feedback, they are trying to bolster the sorcerer class, for example, again, and just actually doing their best to take the feedback that they've heard to heart. So at least that's a good sign. Kudos there, but many would argue that stuff like this just shouldn't have happened in the first place, and it's frustrating when it is the kickoff to the live service, when it is Season 1, right? When it is the first big major content release, the first major event of what is supposed to be a long-term game that kickstarted things on such a whimper. So we'll see how things play out from here on out. But yeah, let's not run Diablo into the ground. The reason fans are so passionate about their feedback is because they care about Diablo. Diablo is such a staple, such an icon in the realm of gaming, and everyone wants to see Diablo thrive, right? We don't want to see it fail. There is a lot of frustration being expressed in the community, but also a lot of the feedback is constructive. I'm sure there is some of the, the toxic stuff that's not constructive at all. Forget about that stuff. The fans really care, and that level of care shows a certain passion for a series that people feel deserves better, especially because Diablo 4 is a very solid foundation. They can clearly take this game and make it extremely successful. The potential is so tangible. You can just smell it and taste it, that people are like, please don't mess this up. Don't let this incredibly solid foundation go to waste. We've seen so many live services potential ruined by a combination of greed or just bizarre choices that are not conducive to a fun game or consumer-friendly game. Just the priority here has to be for the players. And, hopefully we'll get there. In the not-so-distant future. Hopefully it doesn't take too long for Diablo 4 to really stabilize and for it to continue a streak of just good content releases and good seasons that can pave the road to a bright future for the series. In the meantime, though, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the current state of Diablo 4. If you've been playing this game, what your experience has been like, and whether with the recent communications from the devs and the recent patch notes and what's in sight for the future, are you optimistic about Diablo 4 being able to come back from this fumble? Or are you just kind of on the fence, or just kind of fed up with things and just leaving Diablo 4 behind until you start hearing a more consistent streak of good news surrounding this game? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.